patrol ships of the Zarin Compact drifted along the invisible boundary that marked the edge of the Forbidden Zone. Their crews never liked the duty, though none dared to speak it aloud. The zone was a dark scar in the fabric of the galaxy, a vast region of lifeless systems where no ships traveled, no trade routes passed, and no colonies ever took root. To look upon it was to see starfields thin out into cold void, as though the galaxy itself recoiled from what lay inside. The Zarin captain, a cautious officer named Velari, studied his sensors with the same sense of unease that had followed him on every patrol. Normally, the zone was empty. It always was. Yet this time, something shifted. A blip appeared, faint but unmistakable, an object breaking out of the zone, crossing into their watchful range. "Confirm," Velari ordered, his frilled crest twitching. His crew ran checks, recalibrating the sensors twice, but the result remained. A ship was emerging, not just debris or a fragment of rock pulled by gravity tides. This was a vessel, powered and deliberate. When the profile came up on the display, silence fell across the bridge. It was human. The computer confirmed the unmistakable shape, the sharp hull lines, the particular arrangement of drives, the crude but efficient design that every officer in the galaxy could recognize at a glance. Humanity's ships were not elegant like Zarin cruisers or gleaming like Sithis trade vessels. They were functional, resilient, built with a stubborn practicality that made them endure far longer than they should. Velari stared at the image, uneasy. Human ships did not belong here. No one's ships belonged here. The treaties were clear. The zone was forbidden. For centuries, the agreement had held. To break it was unthinkable. "Transmit challenge signal," Velari said finally, his voice steady but tight. "Identify the intruder." The hail was sent on every frequency known to humans, yet the reply never came. The ship drifted serenely, its engines humming at low power. Its beacon remained silent. No registration number flashed. No distress call rose. It was like a ghost, alive but absent of voice. Velari's second officer broke the silence. "Captain, what if it is not truly theirs?" Velari's gaze lingered on the hull. The design was human. There could be no mistake. But something was off. The contours were old, older than modern Terran fleets. It resembled the early exploration vessels of humanity's expansion era, ships that should have long since been retired or decommissioned. And yet this one was here, crossing out of a place where none returned. Velari considered sending a boarding party, but instinct told him no. The zone was a wound of history, a place where precursors once held dominion. Stories lingered, whispers passed down through generations. Fleets lost without trace, explorers who never returned, signals swallowed by silence. To set foot upon a vessel that had emerged from that abyss, it was tempting fate. Instead, Velari relayed the sighting. Messages went up the chain, from Sector Command to the Compact's capital, and from there to the Galactic Council itself. Within hours, what had been the guarded secret of a single patrol was a firestorm across the stars. Velari imagined the council halls filling with arguments, the air thick with suspicion. Humanity was respected but feared for its unpredictability. They had agreed to the treaty. They had sworn never to cross the boundary. So why now? As the hours stretched, Velari could only watch the ship. Its lights burned softly. Its engines pulsed with a steady rhythm. But no crew moved across its decks. No signal broke its silence. Some of his officers began to whisper, their voices low and anxious. They said the humans had awakened something buried in the zone. Others claimed it was a derelict vessel drifting forward, guided by unknown hands. Still others muttered darker things, that it was a warning, a message carried by a ghost. Velari silenced them, but the unease clung to his crew like a shadow. When his patrol shift ended, Valari recorded his log. He spoke plainly. A human vessel has emerged from the Forbidden Zone. Its origin remains unknown. Its silence continues. Until further orders, we will not approach. He paused, then added words that were not required, but that weighed on his thoughts. I have never feared the humans, but tonight I wonder. If they are bold enough to trespass where all others have fallen silent, then perhaps the zone itself has changed. Or perhaps it is not the zone that has changed, but them. The captain ended his log and looked out into the void. The ship lingered there, a single spark of defiance against the darkness. It was patient, waiting, and though Valari did not know why, he felt that all of them, the patrol, the council, perhaps the galaxy itself, were waiting too, waiting for what the humans would do next. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The chamber, a vast amphitheater carved into the side of a hollowed asteroid, vibrated with the layered voices of dozens of species. The delegates were not calm. They rarely were in times of crisis, but this time the unease was different. At the center of their debate loomed the image of a single vessel, human in design, silent, drifting on the border of the Forbidden Zone. The display rotated slowly, showing the dark lines of its hull, the ancient styling of its drives. "This cannot be ignored," rasped a delegate from the insectoid Keth. "Humanity must answer for this intrusion. The treaty is clear. No one enters the zone." Across the chamber, the envoy of the Terran Union stood in silence. She was a composed figure, calm where others shouted. She did not yet rise to speak. Humans had always carried themselves with an unsettling composure in council sessions, as if they weighed every word against a scale no one else could see. The Sithis delegate, luminous in their crystalline form, spoke next. "Perhaps the ship is not human at all. It could be a fabrication, designed to appear Terran, a trick from some other power, meant to stir distrust." "No," came the voice of the chair being, a neutral administrator from the Drelly coalition. "The patrol's scans are undeniable. The construction is human. The alloys, the drives, the patterns, they match Terran signatures. It is their ship." The chamber erupted again, voices clashing in suspicion and fear. Finally, the Terran envoy rose. She spoke in measured tones, her voice carrying across the chamber without effort. "The ship is not ours. The Terran Union has no records of such a vessel in active service, nor have we violated the treaty. If a human vessel has emerged, then it is not of our fleet." Her calm denial did nothing to ease the Council's fears. Some muttered that humanity lied, that this was a test of boundaries. Others whispered of old stories, that humans had a way of finding paths where others dared not tread. Still, orders were given. Recon vessels from multiple species were dispatched to the zone. They approached the silent human ship with careful precision, maintaining distance but activating every sensor array at their disposal. The reports trickled back. The ship was intact. Its hull bore no battle scars. Its systems were active, power flowing steadily through conduits. Yet no identification beacon pulsed from its frame. No call for help came. The ship drifted, engines low as if waiting. Attempts at communication were relentless. Every frequency was used, from standard trade signals to the coded hails reserved for emergencies. Still nothing answered. One report struck the Council hardest. The vessel was old. Its design bore similarities to human ships from centuries ago, the early expansion period. Yet it was not identical. The details were different, the layout unfamiliar, as though it belonged to a line of ships never recorded in the Union's archives. "Explain this," demanded the Keth delegate. "Humans are meticulous record keepers. They forget nothing. How does such a vessel exist unaccounted for?" Again, the Terran envoy stood. She met their gaze without flinching. "We do not know. But I promise you, if it is human, We will find the truth. The promise rang across the chamber. Some believed it, some did not. Humanity had always been unpredictable, capable of brutal honesty, yet equally capable of secrets that shook the galaxy when revealed. The recon vessels remained stationed at the zone's edge, keeping vigil over the silent ship. It did not move, did not respond, did not change. Yet its very presence stirred unease across the stars. Trade routes shifted. Captains whispered in port halls, and scholars pored over old treaties and ancient records. Why was the zone forbidden? What secrets? Did it bury? For generations, no one questioned the silence of that scar in space. Now, a single human ship had broken it, and the galaxy was reminded of questions long left to dust. Valari, the Zarin captain who had first seen the vessel, watched the growing storm of speculation from afar. He felt both vindicated and unnerved. He had expected fear, but not obsession. The ship had become more than an anomaly. It was a symbol, and humanity's quiet stance only deepened the mystery. They did not rush to deny with outrage. They did not offer excuses. They simply repeated their claim. The ship was not theirs. Valari wondered if that calm denial was the most terrifying thing of all. The galaxy now waited, every eye fixed on the lone vessel adrift on the border of darkness. It had not spoken, but its silence was louder than words. The Forbidden Zone had always been spoken of in hushed tones, a place referenced in treaties and navigational warnings, but rarely in open conversation. Now, with a lone human vessel drifting at its edge, those whispers grew louder. Across, the galaxy archives long ignored were reopened. Ancient records were pulled from dusty repositories and failing data crystals. Scholars and historians from a dozen species found themselves thrust into sudden prominence, asked questions for which few had answers. The deeper they looked, the more troubling the discoveries became. The zone had once been the heart of a vast empire, a civilization so advanced that its relics still baffled modern science. The records were fragmented, overwritten by millennia of war and decay. But one thing was clear: the precursors had ruled there. They were beings of power and vision, who shaped entire star systems with their will, and then, without warning, they were gone. Their disappearance left only ruins and silence. Valari, the Zarin captain who had first spotted the human vessel, read the reports with unease. His patrol had become a footnote in history, but he remained at his post, watching. Each time his sensors swept across the ship, he felt a chill ripple through his crest. Scholars uncovered warnings etched into old treaties. The words were not precise, but the meaning was clear. Do not enter. Do not awaken what sleeps. Let the zone remain untouched. For centuries, everyone had obeyed. Until now. The council grew restless. Suspicions sharpened into accusations. Many demanded that humanity explain how one of their ships could emerge from the zone when no other species had managed such a feat. The Terran envoy answered with the same calm words as before. It is not ours. Yet her expression betrayed something more. Some read guilt in her silence. Others thought it was fear. Among the galactic public, rumors spread like wildfire. On crowded stations and trade hubs, voices speculated in low tones. Some believed humanity had found precursor technology and sought to exploit it. Others claimed the humans had always known the truth of the zone, keeping secrets from the rest of the galaxy. And then there were the darker whispers. They said humanity had not discovered the zone at all, that the zone had chosen them. In universities and quiet gatherings, alien historians spoke of fragments rarely discussed. The last experiment of the precursors. No one knew its nature, only that something had been hidden deep within the Forbidden Zone before their empire fell. The experiment was meant to endure, to outlast even the collapse of its creators. What it was, no one dared say aloud. Valari's crew began to change in mood. Some avoided looking at the human ship altogether, as though its mere image unsettled them. Others grew obsessed, staring at the feeds, whispering theories to one another. One officer even claimed he saw patterns in the ship's lights, as though the vessel itself were alive and speaking in a language only the subconscious could hear. Valari ordered silence, but he could not shake his own unease. Reports from recon vessels added to the mystery. Their long-range scans detected unusual energy signatures radiating faintly from the ship, patterns that did not match human reactors, nor any modern design. It was almost older, as though drawn from technologies, buried in precursor ruins. This revelation sent a wave of shock through the council chambers. If true, it meant the vessel was more than a derelict. It was a hybrid of human design and precursor influence. That possibility alone was enough to terrify half the council and fascinate the other half. One delegate finally put into words what many feared to ask. If the humans have made contact with whatever sleeps in the zone, then why have they returned, when none of us ever could? No answer came. Humanity remained silent, their envoy offering no further explanation. Valari returned to his quarters after another long watch and stared at the hollow feet of the vessel one last time before rest. Its dark hull gleamed faintly against the starlight, and in that moment, he wondered if it was not simply waiting, but listening. He remembered the words of one scholar, an alien elder whose trembling voice had addressed the council. The warning lingered in his mind. When the precursors vanished, they left behind more than ruins. They left their echoes. If the humans have touched those echoes, then the galaxy will soon learn why the zone was never meant to be crossed. Valari turned away from the screen, but the words stayed with him. The whispers of the past had become voices of warning, and still the silent ship waited, patient and unmoving, as though daring the galaxy to come closer. The decision was not made lightly. For weeks, the galaxy had stared at the lone human vessel adrift on the border of the Forbidden Zone. It had not moved, had not spoken, had not fired a single shot, yet its silence was deafening, louder than fleets of warships. The council could not ignore it any longer. A boarding mission was approved. Volunteers from 3 different species were chosen, each equipped with scanning gear, translation devices, and protective suits. No humans were permitted to join. The council wanted independent eyes to see what secrets lay inside. Valari, though, not part of the mission, watched the feed from his station. He felt his crest bristle as the small shuttle detached and drifted toward the silent vessel. The human ship loomed larger as they approached. Its hull was not pristine, but neither was it worn from centuries of use. It bore scratches, scorch marks, but none of the expected decay that would accompany so old a design. It looked as though it had been in service only yesterday. The shuttle latched onto an access port. Magnetic clamps held. The boarding party moved quickly, cutting through the sealed hatch. A faint hiss of atmosphere greeted them as the ship opened. Lights flickered to life inside. The corridor they entered was undeniably human, plain, functional narrow walls lined with handholds and panels. The air was thin but breathable. Systems hummed faintly, as though the ship itself was aware of its visitors. "This is impossible," one of the Sithis explorers whispered. Their crystalline body pulsed with unease. No vessel this old should be this intact. They advanced deeper. Their scanners detected no life signs. Every room they passed was empty, crew quarters unused, mess halls silent, machinery humming on automated cycles. The ship was alive without its crew. Finally, they reached the bridge. The doors slid open with a low groan. Consoles glowed faintly in the darkness. The captain's chair sat empty, straps unfastened as though someone had left in a hurry. A faint voice crackled through the comm system. "We opened it. We shouldn't have—" The boarding party froze. The voice repeated, distorted, fragmented by static. A human voice. Male, speaking in an archaic dialect. The words looped again, then broke into silence. Another log followed seconds later. "Keep moving forward. Don't look back. If you stop, it finds you." Valari felt his crest stiffen. The voice carried weight, a desperate edge of warning. The explorers played more logs. Each one was broken, fragmented, scattered. Different voices spoke, male, female, young, old, all human. They spoke of something unseen, of choices made, of doors that should not have been opened, and then the most disturbing message of all, we were the first. We were forgotten. The words echoed across the council chambers when transmitted. Entire delegations fell silent. The implications hung heavy in the air. The boarding party searched the bridge further. DNA traces lingered on the consoles, scans confirming they were human, but not quite. The sequences were older, out of alignment with modern Terran genetics, as though these humans came from a time far removed. "What does this mean?" one of the explorers asked, their voice trembling. No one answered. In the medbay they found more fragments, data pads filled with partial logs. Some entries suggested the crew had survived for a time, keeping the ship running, but eventually, something had changed. The records grew incoherent, as if the writers themselves had been unraveling. The ship, however, showed no sign of struggle. No battle scars, no blood, no bodies. It was simply empty. As the explorers prepared to withdraw, the lights flickered. A soft hum resonated through the ship. For a moment it felt as though the vessel itself were breathing. Valari's sensors caught the surge. Power levels rose across the ship, faint but unmistakable. The human vessel was not dormant. It was waking. The boarding party scrambled back to their shuttle, sealing the hatch behind them. No alarms followed, no attacks. The ship returned to silence, as though content to let them leave. When their report reached the council, chaos erupted. The human envoy listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When pressed, she simply said, "The DNA you found, it is not from our people. It is from our ancestors." The chamber fell silent. The envoy continued. "There are myths among us, of the first exodus, of ships launched before faster-than-light travel, desperate attempts to reach the stars. They were believed to be lost forever. Perhaps one was not, the A." Implications struck harder than any weapon. If true, then the ship was not a violation of treaty. It was a message from humanity's forgotten past. Yet Valari could not shake the final words of the log. We were the first. We were forgotten. Forgotten. By whom? By their descendants? Or by something else? The council chamber had never been so still. The boarding party's findings had rippled across the galaxy. An empty ship, human in design, carrying the voices of a crew long dead, their DNA older than modern Terrans, their words haunting. We were the first. We were forgotten. Every delegate felt the weight of those words. For some, it was fear. For others, anger. For still others, fascination. But for all, it was undeniable. The ship was real, its mystery beyond denial. The Keth delegate was the first to shatter the silence. If humanity lost a fleet, then humanity must answer for it. These ancestors were theirs. Their silence endangered us all. What else have they hidden? The accusation struck like a lash. Murmurs rose, voices sharpening, each species adding their suspicions. The Sithis claimed humans had deliberately concealed their past. The Drayli muttered that the ship was a weapon in disguise. Others suggested humanity had unlocked precursor secrets and meant to wield them alone. Through it all, the Terran envoy stood calm, hands clasped behind her back. At last, she stepped forward. "We do not deny that the DNA is human," she said, her voice steady, carrying the weight of millennia of endurance. "But you must understand, these are not our people. They lived and died before our records began. Their journey was forgotten even by us." "Convenient," hissed the Keth delegate. The envoy's gaze sharpened. "Not convenient, tragic. Humanity has always been explorers, seekers. Long before we had the strength to survive the stars, we sent fragile ships into the void. They were desperate attempts, built in fear of extinction, not in arrogance. We never expected they succeeded. Perhaps one did. Perhaps this is their echo." The words carried a quiet gravity. Some delegates wavered, but suspicion remained. The council demanded proof. In response, humanity acted. Within days, a Terran fleet arrived at the zone's edge. Not a grand armada, not a display of power, but a single dignified delegation escorted by 3 cruisers. Their presence was not aggressive. It was protective, watchful, as though they came not to claim, but to guard. Terran historians and scientists addressed the council directly. They spoke of myths carried in human culture, stories of the first exodus, when a battered Earth had flung its earliest starfarers into the dark, desperate to find safety. The records were fragmentary, buried beneath centuries of wars and rebuilding. No one knew what became of those ships. Until now. The story unsettled the council. Humanity had always been known for resilience, for surviving against odds that crushed others. Now it seemed that endurance stretched further than anyone realized. Even in their earliest days, humans had risked everything to reach the stars. But if these ancestors had entered the zone, the question remained, what had they found? And what had changed them? The Sithis delegate pressed hardest. "Your ancestors did not simply die. Their vessel carries energy not of your design. Their voices speak of doors opened, of things that find them." "Explain this." The Terran envoy did not flinch. "We cannot, but we will not abandon them. If descendants of the first Exodus survive, hidden within the zone, then they are ours to protect. Whatever has awakened, we will face it." Her words carried no arrogance, only resolve. It was not the tone of conquest, but of duty. Yet that resolve unsettled the chamber more than bluster would have. Humanity had drawn a line. Valari, watching from his post, felt the shift in the air. The galaxy was used to humans bending when pressured, negotiating when accused. But not this time. For the first time they stood firm. Their loyalty turned not outward to the council, but inward, to their forgotten kin. The Keth snarled that such protection was reckless. The Scythus glittered with unease. Yet a few voices, quiet but firm, spoke in humanity's defense. "Would you abandon your own if they emerged from the void after 1,000 years?" asked one delegate softly. The question silenced many. Still, unease lingered. For all their calm words, humanity's refusal to yield hinted at something deeper. The lone ship was no longer just a mystery. It was a wedge driving distrust into the council. And through it all, the vessel itself remained silent. Its dark hull floated serenely at the zone's edge, patient, unmoving. Yet Valari could not shake the feeling it was listening. Humanity had responded. The council had reacted. But the ship had not spoken its last. The lone ship drifted at the edge of the Forbidden Zone, silent as ever. Weeks had passed since the boarding team returned with their fragmented logs and DNA scans, but the galaxy's questions remained unanswered. Humanity's declaration that these were their forgotten ancestors only deepened the mystery. Then, without warning, the ship stirred. Valari's patrol was the first to see it. His sensors lit up with a sudden surge of energy. The human vessel's power signature, once steady but faint, spiked with intensity. Systems that had been dormant for centuries flickered to life. Lights burned brighter. The engines thrummed with a low, deliberate hum. "Captain, it's transmitting," his officer gasped. Valari's crest stiffened. The ship had not spoken once since it emerged. Now a torrent of signals spilled across every frequency, flooding the comm channels. The language was chaotic, a blend of archaic Terran dialects and something older, stranger, woven into the transmission. Council ships scrambled to decode the stream. At first it sounded like madness, words half-formed, broken by static, repeating, phrases that seemed to contradict each other. But slowly, patterns emerged. The translation revealed fragments. "We survived. Altered but alive. They shaped us, not with steel, but with will. This vessel is a message, a beacon." The words chilled Valari. It was not only a message from the past, it was a message meant for the present. Across the council chambers, panic erupted. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding to know what was being called and why. The Sithis glittered with alarm. The Keth hissed of danger. Even the calm Drelly administrator trembled in unease. The Terran envoy remained still, listening. When the words, "a beacon," repeated again, her eyes narrowed. Something is answering. She was right. Deep within the zone, long-range sensors picked up faint echoes. Not random signals, but deliberate pulses, rising from the dark like voices stirring after a long sleep. Star systems long dead flared with energy signatures, infrastructure awakening after millennia of silence. Entire constellations seemed to shift, their forgotten machinery turning its gaze outward once more. Valari's officers whispered in fear. "We should leave. Whatever they awakened, it is not for us." But they could not look away. The human vessel continued transmitting, its signals now synchronized with the zone's awakening. The pattern was unmistakable. It was guiding, calling, aligning itself with something vast hidden in the abyss. The boarding party's logs were replayed in council halls. Words once thought fragmented now struck with clarity. "We opened it. We shouldn't have. Keep moving forward." The meaning shifted. These were not random warnings. They were instructions. Orders passed from ancestors to descendants. The revelation tore through the council. Half demanded the ship be destroyed at once before the awakening spread. Others argued that to strike, it would be to strike at humanity's history itself and risk whatever force lay in the zone responding in kind. Through the uproar, humanity made their stance clear. The Terran envoy stood before the chamber, her voice steady. "We do not fear what answers. If there are descendants of the first Exodus in that abyss, then they are our responsibility. We will not abandon them. Whatever they have become, they are ours." Her words rang with conviction. The council recoiled at her resolve, but there was no mistaking the truth. Humanity had chosen its path. Valari listened, and though he was not human, he felt the weight of their resolve. They were not charging blindly into the dark. They were moving with purpose, with the heavy burden of kinship. Still, unease gnawed at him. The echoes growing in the zone were not the signals of simple survivors. They carried strength, coordination, intent. Whatever lived within had endured in silence for millennia. And now the beacon had called them forth. On his private logs, Valari recorded his thoughts. "If this is what remains of their ancestors, then humanity has awoken a power the galaxy has long forgotten. I cannot say whether they are saviors or heralds of something far worse." Out in the void, the lone ship's lights pulsed rhythmically, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. The Forbidden Zone was no longer silent. It was awake, and the galaxy waited, breathless, for what would emerge. The Forbidden Zone was no longer silent. Sensors across the border systems lit with activity. Star systems that had lain dormant for millennia now pulsed with strange energy, their relic stations and forgotten outposts humming faintly, like embers, stirred back to flame. The lone human ship at the zone's edge remained the focal point, its beacon aligning with the awakening within. The Galactic Council descended into chaos. This cannot be allowed to continue, the Keth delegate snapped, mandibles clattering. Destroy the vessel now, before it draws the zone upon us all. Destroy it? The Sithis delegate flared, crystalline body glittering with alarm. And what if its signal is already received? What if to strike it provokes what lies beyond? Murmurs filled the chamber. Fear weighed heavy on every word. No one wanted to admit aloud what they were all thinking. The zone was no longer dead, and its stirring had been triggered by a human ship. All eyes turned to the Terran envoy. She stood as she had before, calm, her presence cutting through the storm of voices. "You know our answer," she said simply. "We will not abandon our own." The words fell like a blade. The Keth erupted in fury. "Your own? These are not your people. They are something else, shaped by precursors, twisted into who knows." "What? They are a danger to every world. Do not speak of kinship." But the envoy did not waver. Kinship is not erased by time. Whatever they have become, they are still human. If they survived in the zone, if they endured when all others perished, then they are proof of our strength. And we will not let them stand alone now that they have called to us. The chamber roared in protest. Some demanded sanctions, others called for immediate strikes, but a few voices, small, cautious, yet steady, spoke in humanity's defense. "Would you turn away if it were your ancestors?" asked the Drayli delegate quietly. "Would you not cross the abyss for your kin?" The question lingered, cutting through the noise. Meanwhile, fleets across the border began to mobilize. Council vessels positioned themselves in uneasy formations, their captains watching humanity's every move. Patrols doubled, weapons charged but not yet fired. Tension hung over the zone like a storm ready to break. And then, the Terran fleet arrived. Not vast in number, but purposeful. Carriers, cruisers, and escorts, all arrayed around a single flagship, the TSS Resolute. Their presence was not meant to intimidate. It was to shield, to protect, to serve as a declaration written in steel. Valari watched the human ships with a heavy sense of unease. They did not bristle with aggression. They did not posture or threaten. Instead, they formed a protective wall before the lone vessel, as if guarding a fragile flame from the wind. Human commanders opened a channel to the council. Their admiral, a woman with a weathered face and steady eyes, spoke with the same tone as the envoy. "We will cross the boundary," she said. "Not in defiance, but in duty. The first exodus called to us across time, and we will answer. If you stand in our way, then know this. We do not come for war, but we will not be stopped." The council was stunned. There was no bluster, no threats of annihilation, only resolve. Valari felt a chill ripple through him. This was the part of humanity that unsettled the galaxy most, not their weapons, not their strength, but their unwavering certainty when bound by duty. They would walk into the dark not because they were unafraid, but because fear did not matter. The lone ship pulsed again, its beacon intensifying. The signals from within the zone responded in kind, patterns aligning, like voices welcoming kin long lost. The human fleet prepared to follow. Debates in the council grew frantic. Some begged for unity, for patience. Others demanded war. But already, the choice had been made. Humanity would go. On the eve of their crossing, Valari recorded his private thoughts once more. "I do not understand them. Perhaps no one does. But I believe this. If any species would walk into the heart of the zone and return, it is humanity. Not because they are the strongest, not because they are the cleverest, but because they refuse to abandon those they call their own, even when the galaxy trembles at the thought. Beyond the council chambers, the Forbidden Zone glowed faintly with awakening light. The stage was set. Humanity had chosen its path. The rest of the galaxy could only wait. The border of the Forbidden Zone stretched before them like a living wall of shadow. To most of the galaxy, it was a line never to be crossed, a graveyard of those who vanished in ages past. To humanity, it had become something else, an invitation, a summons that could not be ignored. The Terran fleet moved as one, engines burning with controlled precision. At their center, the lone human ship pulsed with its strange light, the beacon guiding them deeper. Council fleets held position on the outskirts, watching with dread. Velari stood on his bridge, silent as the first human cruiser pierced the threshold. No alarms screamed. No weapons struck them down. The zone opened, swallowing them whole. And still they pressed forward. Inside, the void was not empty. At first it seemed ordinary space, stars distant, the silence profound. But then their sensors detected it. Structures drifted like Titanic. Skeletons, vast constructs hanging between worlds. Rings the size of moons rotated silently. Broken stations floated, scarred by age, yet not fully dead. It was not a wasteland. It was a mausoleum. The beacon pulsed again. This time, the darkness answered. Lights flared across the husks. Engines, once silent, roared faintly. Whole stations flickered back to life, their systems sparking after millennia of dormancy. And then through the gloom they appeared, ships, not council ships, not Terran ships, but vessels wrought of a design both alien and familiar, curved lines, human angles fused with precursor intricacy. They emerged from the shadow like watchful guardians, dozens at first, then hundreds, encircling the Terran fleet. The comm channels, filled with voices, broken, layered, echoing with age but undeniably human. You came. The beacon was answered. We did not wait in vain. Gasps filled the Terran decks. These were not machines. They were survivors. Their appearance was startling. They bore the marks of time, their features altered by generations in isolation. Their bodies carried precursor augmentations, limbs, reinforced, eyes gleaming with faint, unnatural light. But their voices trembled with something achingly familiar. Hope. The Terran admiral stood at her command console, her voice steady as she replied. We are your descendants. We are the ones who remained outside, who carried forward, and we have come for you. Silence followed. Then, the largest of the ancient ships drifted forward, its hull scarred but unbowed. A figure appeared on its bridge, projected across channels. His face was lined with centuries of strain, his body a fusion of flesh and engineered resilience. Yet his eyes were unmistakably human. We are the first Exodus, he said. We entered the zone when the galaxy still feared to touch the stars. The precursors found us, shaped us, and sought to test us. We endured, we built, and we waited. For you. Emotion rippled through the Terran crews. It was no myth, no lost tale. These were their ancestors, altered yet unbroken. The council fleets outside the zone received fragments of the transmissions. Panic spread as realization dawned. Humanity had not merely uncovered a relic. They had rejoined with a branch of themselves that had survived where none others could. Velari's breath caught as he listened from afar. He could almost feel the shift in history taking place. Two branches of humanity, sundered by time, now stood together once more. The leader of the first Exodus spoke again. The beacon was our promise, that when the time came, we would rise together. The zone is not merely forbidden, it is a forge. And now, together, we are whole. The human. Fleet and the Exodus ships aligned side by side. The sight was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, a fusion of past and present, of myth and reality. The Terrans had not come to awaken a threat. They had come to reunite with their own, to answer a call across the gulf of centuries. For the galaxy, the implications were staggering. A united humanity, modern Terrans with their restless determination and the Exodus survivors with their precursor-forged endurance, was a force beyond imagining. Allies or rivals, no one could yet say. But for the humans themselves, there was no doubt. The Admiral raised her hand in salute, echoed by the Exodus commander. "Two paths, one people," she declared. "We walk forward together." Tarosetan. Zone, once a place of fear, was no longer forbidden. It had become the cradle of reunion. Velari closed his eyes as he recorded his final log. History will not remember today as the day the zone awoke. It will remember it as the day humanity answered itself and changed the galaxy forever.